Oh, sweet. All right, so welcome to the April Digital Twin Hub meet. We did a little bit of promo actually around the meets when the progress report for the Digital Twin Challenge went out. So it's we're likely to have and continue to see as the promotion for the Digital Twin Challenge continues, and Robin's back on board as our Global Engagement Manager. A bit more, way more interest, I think, in the meets from across the membership and wider. So we're into April. Just a reminder, cameras are optional. Mute when you're not talking and use the chat box for questions if you feel like it. Otherwise, we'll have a Q&A at the end. It looks like, Ian, it might just be you unless Phil does join from Bentley. I've just asked him to as a backup, but it might just be a one speaker person, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So we're up to IoT and Digital Twin, and obviously we're curating the rest of the program as well. So if there's any interest from your organization or yourself or yourselves to speak at an upcoming event, let me know, get in touch. Visit the digitaltwinhub.org for more information about all things digital twin across the region. And just FYI that the task force met last week after a wee while, the Digital Twin Hub Task Force. So we're just having a look at the moment around what we do with the hub and what we can do with the hub and what happens with content and the forum on there, and obviously what's next with the Digital Twin strategy blueprint, and do we spin off a strategy for New Zealand, a strategy for Australia? We've actually got a task force waiting in the wings to develop out the New Zealand strategy, and what happens. The Digital Twin Challenge has been so successful that we're just sort of thinking, how does that fit in with everything else that we already had underway? And last week we also chatted with Minister Clark. We were able to join a call with Minister Clark over here in New Zealand to talk about the New Zealand, the proposal rather, for a New Zealand national digital twin. So I'll keep people posted on those conversations as well. So continuing on with that trend about New Zealand, the lineup for the program is being drafted rather this week. Should have it out next week for the lineup of speakers for the Digital Twin Summit in Wellington. We'll hold it again in Wellington, and the sponsor pack's gone out, and we're close to already locking in the platinum sponsor. So loads of interest in the digital twin space in both countries. And then, of course, Digital Twin Week, 17th to 21st of October, which we're combining with Smart Cities Week. And those, Robin's just working on the sponsor packs for those, and I'm working on the program. So it's 100 miles an hour basically. I'm happy that we had sort of 2 long weekends there, because going forward there's going to be a heap to do around not just the digital twin obviously, but generally in the smart city space. So just a reminder of who's actually part of the Digital Twin Challenge. And then it was actually Harman Singh from GHD was also going to speak today, but unfortunately he's had to pull out because he's unwell. He did let me know last week, and I was managed to tee up a fill-in from Bentley, but I haven't heard from Phil. So at the moment it may just be Ian Hatton. So the challenge, I don't know if any of you have seen, but these are the projects and the clusters, and we put out a progress report, which I'll just share a link to if that's of interest, just in the chat, to an update on all things to do with the Digital Twin Challenge. So that was put out, I believe, start of last week. So there's a link to that. It's a PDF document that you can download, and as you'll see, that was where a little bit of promotion was happening around the hub meets as well. So have a look at that if you're interested. There are a number of, there's actually quite an easy way to track the progress. So there are a number of projects and they've got various stages, and have a look at that. And you'll also see in a section underneath each update on each project, apart from the status of how they're progressing, what it is that we're really looking at uncovering with that piece of work. So after the intensives the other week, at the end of March, we will be going out to a wider stakeholder pool when we have something more concrete to share on each of those projects, to get that sort of wider feedback, because the knowledge resources are for the ecosystem. So we want to make sure that we haven't got any huge gaps in there or missed something off the mark on something. But I don't think we're not going to be far off, because we've got a great cohort there that's working quite collaboratively, both across each project team, but across the wider cohort as well of, I think there's like 17 organizations. So it's quite a big logistical nightmare to pull it together. But today's topic is IoT and Digital Twin. And we have today, as I mentioned, Hanuman had to pull out, but we've got Ian from Complete Urban who's going to speak first. And I will keep chasing up Ian. I'll just keep trying Phil and see if we can line him up, because I did hear from him on Friday and he said he's happy to just stay in the wings and wait to hear. Otherwise, you've got 10 minutes and then what we'll do is Ian will present, and if we do get Phil will present, and then I'll just switch the recording and for the Q&A and discussion. So Ian, over to you. I'll stop sharing now and I'll make sure that you can share. So just wait for me to sort that out. There we go. You should be able to share now.
Thanks, Janet. I'll give it a go.
Yep.
Let me know if you can.
Yep. Just in PowerPoint mode rather than presentation mode.
So if I've got a magic quadrant thing from Gartner there, is that?
No, we've got the PowerPoint view where like you can see it without being, so I think it's in the bottom right hand corner. You've got to hit like the slide option. So
oh
like, yeah. The one next to
okay.
the plus and minus thing.
Yep, as long as you can see it, that's good. Okay.
So you haven't done that as yet, because we're still just seeing the view with the cards down the left hand side. If you're happy to go with that, we'll just go with that. Yeah,
I'm not very good with Zoom. I use Teams.
That's all right. That's
so
okay. Yeah,
I'll probably cause more problems myself.
Okay.
So as long as you see something, I've got two things I want to talk about, and really I'm prioritising the IoT component of this discussion, because there's a lot of people working on digital twins and a lot of different versions of digital twin, and lots of opportunities there. I think everyone would agree that the digital twin approach is going to be increasingly common and valuable. So what I really wanted to do was to pick a use case and look at how digital twins can move it forward. So in essence, I'm going to talk about environmental sensing, because it links into so many other things around place and people and movement and various other agendas that are common across government and industry. So environmental sensing, I think, is maturing probably more quickly than a lot of other IoT use cases. So I've done work with water utilities, councils and other agencies, and where there's a scale deployment opportunity like water metering or energy use, then industry is kind of grabbing it and running with it, because there's commercial and other benefits in doing so. Whereas some of the other sensing opportunities, which are more government focused in the traditional sense around temperature, humidity, et cetera, are being done, in my opinion, at quite effectively at the local level, but they're yet to move beyond the telling people interesting things. And what I'm not seeing, and where I think the opportunity for a digital twin approach is strong, is to bring together some of those currently independent IoT projects. So, for example, if you take the Northern Territory, Darwin's doing some interesting work on trying to cool the public realm. So temperature and humidity is obviously an issue, particularly in the wet season in the Northern Territory. They also do some people movement and traffic monitoring, but those two things are currently semi-independent. Now, I know they're working with CSIRO, and I've been in discussions with those guys, but I think the interesting thing with their projects are they've got a clear policy agenda and a clear set of outcomes, and they're moving towards a digital twin as a way of understanding when you successfully bring the temperature or humidity down through shade structures, prevailing winds, planting and things like that, does it mean that more people come to a location and transact in whatever way? So do people spend longer in a park? Do people do more shopping? Does food and beverage benefit from the changed conditions in the high street? And that's where I think a significant opportunity across government exists. So even if you talk to Catherine and the guys at Meshed, I think they've got something like 50 or 60 councils running environmental sensing over their LoRaWAN network. there's various other agencies and sort of operational models to collect, building energy and water consumption, foot traffic going past retail outlets, traffic monitoring using Bluetooth sniffing and other technologies, map sniffing for people movement, camera-based analytics, etc., etc. So really where I think the next stage of value creation could be for environmental sensing is to start to align that with some of the really important use cases. For example, population growth, urban density means that the location and design of parks may need to change. The road reserve typologies may need to change, which basically then requires changes to planning guidelines, urban design guidelines, engineering standards, etc., etc. At the moment, those two things.
Ian, just a quick one. Are the slides meant to be changing? Because for us, they're not.
No, I've only got a couple of slides.
Right, great. Just wanted to check. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So I think the digital twin can start to model out across locations around the country what kinds of things are being sensed. So what's the temperature and humidity at certain times of the day, at certain times of the year, and how many people are experiencing that compared with a location somewhere else in the country, which may have a similar set of circumstances, but people experience it differently. So the digital twin, I think, creates an opportunity to bring together those diverse, both in terms of geography and in terms of the kinds of things that they're measuring, but those diverse projects to model out different scenarios. And what I've shown here in the images, I mean, at the bottom is Darwin, and clearly planting and that kind of natural absorption of heat is a critical component, but they are also looking at artificial shade structures in the high street. The middle image is central Sydney, which is a completely different kind of design, but of course, Sydney does experience high temperatures, perhaps not the same humidity because it's not in the sort of tropical regions, but you've got in effect two cities that probably experience similar things in the central core, but experience them in a totally different way and would need different approaches and designs. But at the moment, there's not really a model to understand the similarities and differences between those two locations. And then the image at the top really is one of those very simple sort of bringing together of the different facets of the public realm. So I think there's a huge opportunity to start to look across all of those different sensing projects and to overlay that with traffic and people data to understand, how high does an awning have to be in a CBD area in central Sydney versus an awning in somewhere like Toowoomba, for example, which is a semi-regional town in Australia, versus somewhere in the outback. And what sort of things do people expect to see? What sort of things are people willing to tolerate to transact the kinds of things they want to do? And obviously, the transaction patterns at lunchtime in a CBD in Sydney would be quite different to those in a regional town. So the modelling component, I think, is in its very early stages, and a digital twin bringing together all of those sensing locations to build up some, built form typologies, if you like, that in these circumstances, this level of planting, these types of trees or whatever, bushes or whatever, grasses would be important. And then you can start to overlay, well, when do you irrigate them? I mean, if you're irrigating in the evening, you'd expect to see less evaporation, which may help with humidity as well. The shade structures and awnings can be analysed under different circumstances. And, you see globally, ironically, some of the environmental sensing technology doesn't actually work in the conditions it's deployed. So extreme cold or extreme heat and humidity tends to adversely affect the sensing technology. So even getting the technology to perform consistently could be modelled out to see under what circumstances do you need to spend more or do a bit more design. And something I'm particularly interested in from a personal point of view as well as professional are that the top bullet point and the bottom bullet point, because I think that the planning and urban design industry, if you like, is probably one of the most high potential beneficiaries of collecting lots of data. And I've worked around town planning and certainly in urban design in the UK. and it remains a kind of an experience-based profession, that after doing it for 10, 20, 30 years, you kind of know what works and what doesn't. If you were to overlay a digital twin onto that, where you could put your assumptions into a model and run them through based on what's happening somewhere else, and you could then scenario test different forecast population growths and densities and different transaction styles in your specific area of interest, I think that would have huge value, not only for government delivering services, but for private companies, private developers, and more importantly than any of those probably are the people who go and buy houses or work in shops or walk through the high street. So I think the intersect for me is currently underdeveloped and creates a significant opportunity to take a lot of that IoT data, run them through relatively localized digital twins to build typology models that could then be aggregated into a national digital twin or a statewide digital twin or whatever. But at the moment, that IoT data, I think, is probably being underutilized, and the value creation is a very significant opportunity. So I think the debate I'm sort of keen to get going, and I've certainly had this conversation with probably 10 or 12 agencies that I'm going to try to bring into a sort of a structured way forward, is how can all the environmental sensors be brought together for collective benefit? Because even if you take 30 or 40 participating councils, that's a huge amount of data, that's temporal, it's circumstantial, and can inform some very important land use planning and urban design benefits, as well as people's experience of the public realm, parks, and things like that. So for me, the challenge is how does this get brought into a sort of a classic almost data challenge, which is how does everyone share the data? What are the risks and benefits? And how do you then roll that into a digital twin to allow people to access it and run models, rather than having multiple instances of digital twins built around this kind of data? How do you create a sort of a single environment where people can log in and run their own interrogations and scenarios, and then share that with others? So at that sort of call to action point is the end of my slides. As I say, I think a massive opportunity. I mean, it was mentioned in the lead up to this session that flood modeling could be rolled into this. Where are impacts in extreme weather conditions? But I suppose my personal bias today has been that sort of the things that people experience day in, day out, and particularly in a country that can get very hot and humid. So the economic development and community benefits, I think, are huge in aligning IoT and having that sort of constant stream of data feeding into a digital twin that people can use for all kinds of different use cases. So with that, I'll end my presentation. Thank you.
Cool. I just want to let you know, Ian, again, that the slides didn't move. So they were always
They didn't move at all?
No,
okay.
they've just been stuck on the complete. So is there anything that you really want to quickly flick through that we didn't see? I mean, you talked to the pictures of the two parts of like Sydney and the other regional town, but we didn't see those, and we didn't see the call to action bit. And yeah.
Oh, very sorry. Can you see it now?
Yeah, now we can see your presenter view, so I don't know what's happening, but if you go backwards, you could probably just flick through the slides quickly in case there was anything specific that you wanted us to.
It's not allowing me now to.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, we go. Yeah,
here we go. So that was what I talked about. They were the kind of sensing. They were the images that Darwin and Sydney, obviously being quite different in terms of. I mean, obviously, I've selected pictures that make the point.
Yeah.
But I think that a digital twin based around that image at the top, which brings together a range of different factors, and not just is it hot or humid or whatever. It's kind of, well, how many people are there experiencing it is critical. Yeah. And then that call to action being, well, how do we actually start bringing this together and trying to get things moving, as it were.
Thank you. I haven't heard from, just quickly while I've got I haven't heard from Phil, so I'll pause the recording there and just call it a one presenter session today, unless he suddenly appears. But thanks for that, Ian. Now